Green Gardens by Frances Noyes Hart. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Bologna Times. Green Gardens by Frances Noyes Hart. Daphne was singing to herself when she came through the painted gate in the back wall. She was singing partly because it was June and Devon, and she was 17, and partly because she had caught a breathtaking glimpse of herself in the long mirror as she had flashed through the hall at home, and it seemed almost too good to be true that the radiant small person in the green muslin frock with the wreath of golden hair bound about her head and the sea blue eyes laughing back at her was really Miss Daphne Chiltern. Incredible, incredible luck to look like that, half Dryad, half Kate Greenaway. She danced down the turf path to the herb garden, swinging her great wicker basket and singing like a small mad thing. "He promised to buy me a bonny blue ribbon," caroled Daphne, all her own ribbons flying. "He promised to buy me a bonny blue ribbon. He promised to buy me a bonny blue ribbon to tie up—" The song stopped as abruptly as though someone had struck it from her lips. A strange man was kneeling by the beehive in the herb garden. He was looking at her over his shoulder, at once startled and amused, and she saw that he was wearing a rather shabby tweed suit and that his face was oddly brown against his close-cropped, tawny hair. He smiled, his teeth a strong flash of white. "Hello," he greeted her, in a tone at once casual and friendly. Daphne returned the smile uncertainly. "Hello," she replied gravely. The strange man rose easily to his feet, and she saw that he was very tall and carried his head rather splendidly, like the young bronze Greek in Uncle Roland's study at home. But his eyes were strange, quite dark and burned out. The rest of him looked young and vivid and adventurous, but his eyes looked as though the adventure were over, though they were still questing. "Were you looking for anyone?" she asked, and the man shook his head, laughing. "Huh, no one in particular, unless it was you." Daphne's soft brow darkened. "It couldn't possibly have been me," she said in a rather stately small voice, "because, you see, I don't know you. Perhaps you didn't know that there is no one living in Green Gardens now." "Oh, yes, I knew. The Fanes have left for Ceylon, haven't they?" "Sir Harry left 2 weeks ago, because he had to see the old governor before he sailed. But Lady Audrey only left last week. She had to close the London house, too, so there was a great deal to do." "I see. And so Green Gardens is deserted." "It is sold," said Daphne with a small quaver in her voice. "Just this afternoon. I came over to say good bye to it, and to get some mint and lavender from the garden." "Sold," repeated the man, and there was an agony of incredulity in the stunned whisper. He flung out his arm against the sun-warmed bricks of the high wall, as though to hold off some invader. "No, no. They'd never dare to sell it." "I'm glad you mind so much," said Daphne softly. "It's strange that nobody minds but us, isn't it? I cried at first, and then I thought that it would be happier if it wasn't lonely and empty, poor dear. And then it was such a beautiful day that I forgot to be unhappy." The man bestowed a wretched smile on her. "You hardly conveyed the impression of unrelieved gloom as you came around that corner," he assured her. "I haven't a very good memory for being unhappy," Daphne confessed remorsefully, a lovely and guilty rose staining her to her brow at the memory of that exultant chant. He threw back his head with a sudden shout of laughter. "These are glad tidings. I'd rather find a pagan than a Puritan at Green Gardens any day. Let's both have a poor memory. Do you mind if I smoke?" "No," she replied. But do you mind if I ask you what you are doing here?" "Not a bit." He lit the stubby brown pipe, curving his hand dexterously to shelter it from the little breeze. He had the most beautiful hands that she had ever seen, slim and brown and fine. They looked as though they would be miraculously strong and miraculously gentle. "I came to see whether there was honey still for tea, Mistress Dryad." "Honey for tea?" she echoed wonderingly. "Was that why you were looking at the hive?" He puffed meditatively. "Well, partly. It's a quotation from a poem. Ever read Rupert Brooke?" "Oh, yes, yes." Her voice tripped in its eagerness. "I know one by heart. 'If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England, there shall be.'" He cut in on the magical little voice roughly. "Ah, what damned nonsense! Do you suppose he's happy in his foreign field, that golden lover? Why shouldn't even the dead be homesick? No, no, he was sick for home in Germany when he wrote that poem of mine. He's sicker for it in heaven, I'll warrant." He pulled himself up swiftly at the look of amazement in Daphne's eyes. "I've clean forgotten my manners," he confessed ruefully. "No, don't get that flying look in your eyes. I swear that I'll be good. It's a long time. It's a long time since I've talked to anyone who needed gentleness. If you knew what need I had of it, you'd stay a little while, I think." "Of course I'll stay," she said. "I'd love to, if you want me to." "I want you to more than I've ever wanted anything that I can remember." His tone was so matter of fact that Daphne thought that she must have imagined the words. "Now can't we make ourselves comfortable for a little while? I'd feel safer if you weren't standing there ready for instant flight. Here's a nice bit of grass, and the wall for a back." Daphne glanced anxiously at the green muslin frock. "It's pretty hard to be comfortable without cushions," she submitted diffidently. The man yielded again to laughter. "Aren't even dryads afraid to spoil their frocks? Cushions it shall be. There are some extra ones in the chest in the East Indian room, aren't there?" Daphne let the basket slip through her fingers, her eyes black through sheer surprise. "But how did you know? How did you know about the lacquer chest?" she whispered breathlessly. "Oh, devil take me for a blundering ass!" He stood considering her forlornly for a moment, and then shrugged his shoulders with a brilliant and disarming smile. "The game's up, thanks to my inspired lunacy. But I'm going to trust you not to say that you've seen me. I know about the lacquer chest because I always kept my marbles there." "Are you Stephen Fane?" At the odd whisper the man bowed low, all mocking grace, his hand on his heart, the sun burnishing his tawny head. "Oh!" breathed Daphne. She bent to pick up the wicker basket, her small face white and hard. "Wait," said Stephen Fane. His face was white and hard too. "You are right to go. Entirely, absolutely right. But I am going to beg you to stay. I don't know what you've heard about me. However vile it is, it's less than the truth." "I have heard nothing of you," said Daphne, holding her gold-wreathed head high. "But 5 years ago I was not allowed to come to Green Gardens for weeks because I mentioned your name. I was told that it was not a name to pass decent lips." Something terrible leapt in those burned out eyes, and died. "I had not thought they would use their hate to lash a child," he said. "They were quite right, and you too. Good night." "Good night," replied Daphne clearly. She started down the path, but at its bend she turned to look back, because she was 17 and it was June, and she remembered his laughter. He was standing quite still by the golden straw beehive, but he had thrown one arm across his eyes, as though to shut out some intolerable sight. And then, with a soft little rush